Let me start the discussion for this class. So good morning. So let's resume back our discussion on understanding the convolutional networks and subsequently moving on to the generative adversarial networks. Also, any questions on the understanding of convolutional networks? Okay, so yesterday we started the discussion on generative models. So can any of you brief very quickly, what did we discuss yesterday? Yeah, quickly, can one of you summarize? What did we discuss yesterday?
These models, using input images, these models try to capture the distribution in which the pixels are they come from, and using this distribution they try to sample from the distribution to generate new images.
Right. So essentially, so doing is we are trying to take some samples and trying to use these samples only to extract the discriminative features to perform either classification or extract features to perform detection or any other task. So we are only analyzing the given image or like samples, and then trying to get their features and then better representation of the samples to perform the task, right? That's what we have been doing. So now these generator models, what they do is they try to bring try to look for the base from which these samples have come from. Okay, so if we know the space or like distribution where these samples have come from, using those distribution, can we do the same task like classification better? Okay, or can we do any better representation of these samples itself? See, if we have actually 100 samples or 1000 samples or 10,000 samples, we can't ensure that we have a very good ability to represent all of them in a convenient way, such that they can be very well discriminated from other classes and so on. But once we get the distribution from where these have come from, and if we identify the distribution of each of the class, it is more convenient or more feasible to get the like better representation of the samples itself. And with that representation or from the distribution of the samples, we can perform the task effectively. So this is not very new in sense that generative models also have been explored in the past before this convolutional networks and generative adversarial networks. However, there was very limited success in generating the samples or capturing the distribution of samples. Okay, so the conventional ways of doing this are through Parsons windows, nearest neighbor estimator, or density estimation techniques. So did any of you guess what those may be? Say, if I give you a set of samples and if I ask you to find out the distribution of samples, what do you think you will do? Let's come from one dimension. Okay, assume that I have given some samples. Okay, so for X, I'm giving some 0.2, 0.15, 0.02, and so on, 0.3, 0.29, etc. I'm giving some samples for a feature. I'm just measuring the length of a fish or whatever. Okay, I'm just measuring the distance between eyes for face recognition. Some one feature I'm measuring for a particular, for each sample. And I have got this. Now the question is, I want to know the distribution of these samples. How do I get it? Okay, these are all samples. No answer?
We can calculate, we can first...
we need P of X. Yeah.
We can assume first which kind of distribution this is, and then if it's a Gaussian distribution, then we can find the mean and the variance.
Very good.
And then,
So one kind of approach is we can assume that this may be coming from a Gaussian distribution, and then I will find out mu, okay, and sigma square by what methods? Any method? Can you name? By what method can I find mu and sigma square? Yeah, quick answer is required. See, if I assume that normal with mu and sigma square are the parameters to be identified. If I assume that these are uniform from A to B, the parameters to be identified are A and B. Okay, if I assume that these are some other distribution, okay, relay distribution or whatever distribution, then I may need to estimate the corresponding parameter, exponential distribution, for example, if I assume, okay, so then I may need to find out the exponential distribution parameters. Okay, so the parameters I need to find will be varying from based on what I assume as the distribution. Is it not? So now how do I find these parameters is the question, which you should answer.
Maximum likelihood estimation.
Right. Okay, you estimate this by maximum likelihood estimation. So all maximum likelihood estimation that we have discussed in the ML class is for parameter estimation when we assume some particular parameter for the samples, and that deals with the estimation of the distribution itself of the samples. Okay, because we don't know P of X given omega 1, okay, and then P of X given omega 2 and so on. Our aim is to find out that or estimate that. Okay, given that samples, that class samples, right? That's what we have done in the earlier course. So this is one way. Second way of doing it. See, I don't want to assume any parameters now. Okay, but still I want P of X. Then what do I do? Okay, this is parameter estimation for distribution. Okay. Yeah, if I don't want to assume any parametric form, any answer? Yeah, you should be able to tell.
we can construct a histogram.
Very good.
Assume that is the distribution.
Right, very good. So we can construct now a histogram. Simply you construct a histogram. Okay, and then you sketch, say what is the range, for example, minimum is 0, maximum is 0.3 if it is. Okay, you just see the frequency in of occurrence of samples, okay, in different bins. Okay, so I may be binning them from 0 to say 0.1 or even 0 to 0.05. Okay, and then 0.05 to 0.1 and so on. And then in each bin, I will count the number of samples, and that will give me a histogram. That histogram itself is a representative of the distribution of the samples. Yes or no? Then based on this is a non-parametric form of the P of X. This itself is P of X because I am counting the class frequency in the y direction, and then for each feature X in the X direction. Okay. So this is other way. So these are, say, for counting the number of samples in a bin, there are different ways. I can assume that, see, bin can be of a equivalent spread, or I can assume that I want to capture at least, say, 3 samples to estimate the class frequency at that location. Okay, of the X. So if I want to calculate P of X, I need at least 3 samples because in some regions I may not have any samples. So I will see 3 regions, 3 samples, and how much distance these samples capture. Okay, that is the inversely proportional to the frequency there. If they are very dense at that location, okay, then that means the probability is high. If the density of samples in a given location of X is small, the frequency is, or the probability of X is less at that location of X. Like that I can do, right? So this not necessarily be limited for the one-dimensional features. This can also be done when the features are a vectors. Okay, so x1 to x2. And this can also be, D can also be equal to 400 or something like that. Okay, which is equal to 200. Oh, sorry. It can also 20 cross 20 image. And hence I can find out the distribution of images itself. But these kind of methods require very large number of samples. That's one limitation. Second limitation is, see, assuming parametric form is very strict. We are assuming ourselves at the beginning itself because it's completely unknown. And for non-parametric techniques, the space is very vast. And in that space, usually the distribution will be more or less sparse, in the sense that most of the places of X, we will have 0 samples. And at some locations of X, we will only have limited samples. So it's given that these distribution estimates of the the samples will not be very accurate. And sampling from them is again a very challenging task. See, if I ask you to generate uniform random variables, okay, how will you generate through a computer program? Any of you know? It's very challenging. It's not easy. If we ask you to generate samples by a Gaussian distribution, that is also not easy. Okay, you have rand and functions in the MATLAB, but underlying codes are not very trivial. If I ask you to generate a Gaussian samples from this P of X, which is arbitrary P of X, then we are gone. It's not at all easy. Okay, in fact, there is a like communication theory course which deals with transformation of random variables. In fact, mathematics and probability and statistics course also deals with this kind of random processes kind of course, stochastic process. So they will try to deal with the transformation of random variables. There is a rigorous math required. On the top of it, generating the samples of one distribution from another distribution is not very trivial. Okay, so for that reason, first thing, capturing the distribution itself is difficult. Second thing, generating the samples from the distribution is also difficult. So for these regions, they are not very successful in the literature so far. But the generator adversarial networks, okay, are one of them which will which made this effectively feasible. Okay, so before these generative adversarial networks, one kind of like the feasibility or the one kind of study through deep learning or machine learning based methods is through autoencoders. Denoising autoencoders. So the advantage of learning based methods is that they not only find out the distribution of samples, but we can also be able to find out a good representation of these samples in this process. See, typically autoencoders look like a encoder-decoder structure. So where we have those who are in those who might have taken some of the communication courses may know that usually if you want to communicate any message, what we do is we first encode it, okay, and then we send the message and then we decode it, right? So the encoded and decoded forms will be same in sense that the first initial form of the message and the final form of the message we receive will be almost identical. In the same manner here, this is the original image, okay, and the dimensions may be 20 cross 20 or 200 cross 200 as well. Okay, and this is the final image output. Okay, this is also in the form of image, and this can be sometimes exactly identical. We may be learning the same thing here. The reasons I will tell why we will learn the same things. So what essentially we are trying to do is we are trying to find out a network here. This can be a one feed forward kind of network or a convolution kind of network. It can be of both nature. In sense that these say in between layers can also be, you have actually say 3 layers or whatever. Here also 3 layers will be there. Each of these 3 layers can be conv layers or fully connected layers. Okay, and what this is encoding. Okay, so through this what we are trying to do is we are trying to learn a network, okay, to reconstruct or to like decode from the encoded information the same image or the same information. So the advantage of this is it just if we consider it as a very naive application. So if there is a noise here, okay, and if we train such that with noise image to non-noise image, okay, it will be able to apply, it will be able to perform denoise. Or if there are some missing informations here, okay, so if we train initially with the same image about to reconstruct and so on, okay, these can be free from the missing informations. So the like the training can take our, while training we can put the missing information here and non-missing information here. In that way we can train, and then it will be able to just smooth like the fill the okay, so kind of a little bit of kind of int painting. Fine. So these are different applications of this, but essentially what is happening in this is we are encoding the information in between. So this can be of very smaller dimension than the image. So this, say for example, if it is 400 class 1, for like 4 into 10 power 4 class 1, this encoded information may be say some 100 class 1 dimension. So we can have a compact representation, and then this representation in some sense is decoded into the original image. So here essentially, even though we are not capturing fully the distribution of the samples, but we are able to generate the samples with the small variations which are there in the input. In sense that we are trying to generate the samples with some variations to the input samples, or we are trying to catch the space where the samples are and try to generate the samples which are more important or more interesting in that space. So this is what about the autoencoders. Denoising autoencoders also, what do they do is they add different kinds of noises, and they try to use the effect of like noise to like explore in the space of the samples, okay, and then try to reconstruct the samples of interest. So these were the like earlier methods which had limited success in terms of partially capturing the distribution or representing these like the encodings using the distribution of samples. That means we are using the samples on both sides, but we are capturing the encoding of the samples. So these features can also be used for classification. For example, if we want to perform a classification task using this, what we do is we take, say, assume that these are X and these are Y. What we are doing is we are using these features Y as the features of X, and then use for classification. So we may train a neural network, or we may train a support vector machine, or we can use nearest neighbor classifier to classify different class of samples using this encoder decoder structure and these encodings. This is how the like limited success on the capturing the distribution of samples, or using effectively this sample, like mapping the sample to sample for representation of samples. So any questions here?
Sir, small question.
Yeah.
Sir, you said here we can use this for classification, right? So this is not the same as you're talking about another application of autoencoders here.
Right. No,
Okay.
Prabhat, can you be clear?
I'm asking if here the classification that you mentioned in the ending, if that is different from the application, different from synthesis that you've been talking about.
Correct. This is not, say, synthesis is essentially done here. Say you can, these autoencoders can be used in different variants. See, for example, if I give a image which is having some missing information, okay, from there I will be able to generate the image without missing information. So I am not generating the whole image. It's not the whole image synthesis, but I am able to synthesize the information in the image. That's how the synthesis is happening here. Or if there is a missing, like noisy information in the original image, I can train in such a way that I can get this side without noise. Okay, noise-free image. So this is what. So what's happening here is I am trying to capture the distribution of samples. I'm trying to get the sample which is noise-free. when I have a sample around it, which is noisy. So this is in limited sense the synthesis. Okay, but it's not the complete synthesis of the images. Like like generative adversarial networks attempt or does is they try to use this as, say, for example, you are not synthesizing, you are taking an image or the corrupted image or some good information of the image or the sample with some information like around the actual sample and trying to go to this sample of interest. But what GANs does is they take the noise itself and try to generate the samples. That is really the synthesis.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So here, but the advantage this autoencoders has is they have the kind of associating with like learning the associated memory kind of capabilities they have, in the sense that they have the memory of capturing the distribution implicitly. That's why they are able to find out or reconstruct the the images, even if the original image is with some missing informations, okay, or with some like little bit of different degradations kind of thing. So that's in that sense only it is synthesis. So they are capturing the distribution and hence they are able to get the P of, say, the sample generated from this X. Okay, but they're only implicitly capturing, given that, say, it's in some sense P of X, given that X degraded is what they're doing. They are not doing directly P of X, capturing P of X.
Sir, so this capturing is done by in the weights, right? In the weights of the network.
Yes, using the weights of the network, right?
Yes.
Correct. So what in classification is happening is they are capturing in some sense P of Y given X. Y is the feature vector. And using this feature vector, we can perform either nearest neighbor classifier or whatever. So they represent, in some sense, they are used for compression kind of applications, where you can see that this is a reduced dimension compared to this. So these are the other applications of these autoencoders.
Yes.
Yeah, fine. Okay. Now let's move on to the discussion on generative adversarial networks. So as I mentioned, generative adversarial networks, it has two essential building blocks. One is generator and other is discriminator. So far, if we see any convolutional neural network or any learning based algorithms, we have seen a complete connection, okay, between the input, like the input to the output, in the sense that whatever information we are giving the input is forwarded, okay, in the same sequence, and then the error, whatever we have here, that error is back propagated till the input. So there is a direct guidance of the, in some sense, there is a direct hand holding of the error to adjust the weights of the network. In GANs or generative adversarial networks, the difference is there is no direct hand holding. Okay, so the feedback goes in an informal way, or in like in a game theoretic framework, in the sense that, see, this independently works and does something. Okay, and the generator independently try to synthesize, assume that, or capture P of X. Okay, so we have actually from some Z, initial some random another distribution, okay, which is from P of Z. Okay, we try to capture or give X's or try to capture P of X. That is the role of generator. What discriminator does is it try to assess the generator, what it has done, is it correct or not, and try to say to the extent has the knowledge of the true sample X in its to it tries to say that to whatever is being generated by the generator is trying to say that it's not correct, in the sense that it tries to see the limitations of the generator and try to highlight them. So in the sense that this is say this is given to discriminator has the true X with it, and this P of X, say this is synthesized as, let's put X S. Okay, this is being given to this discriminator. So here you can see that the generator initially works as an independent entity. Okay, and then discriminator tries to give its assessment on it to the extent in a critic manner. Okay, more like a critic manner. So it starts with the assumption that whatever is generated is wrong. Okay, and generator doesn't get suppressed, or it doesn't get fooled immediately. So it tries to use the critic of the discriminator and try to explore or generate better and better samples. Okay, so this is the game that this generator and discriminator plays in generative adversarial networks. Okay, is this clear? See, G, assume that generator is again a convolution neural network. It can be a simple neural network, feed forward, or it can be convolution neural network. Since we are generating the samples, which are, say, for example, GRZ is supposed to be a sample, the dimension of input may be a, say, vector, because this is a noise, as I mentioned. The beauty of these GANs is that they show the remarkable ability which has been not so shown so far, that the generation can also be done through random samples. So that means if you give, say, it's like in communication theory, we can say that if we have a Gaussian random variables, you can map onto the uniform random variables, to transformation of random variables. Similarly, uniform random variables can be mapped onto the any relay random variable or whatever. If we know the transformation of random variables, or if we say, for example, if we say a relation between these random variables, use those relations and try to make the transformation of random variables feasible. That means one random variable, if you generate, I can transform these to the other random variable, and then the distribution also gets transformed effectively. So if I generate uniform random variable with this transformation, at the end I will be having Gaussian random variables. Okay, so that's conventionally possible for a limited class of distributions, because you need to get the relation between how this random variable and that random variable are related. Okay, so then only you will be able to apply the or perform the transformation of random variables. If we consider real samples, their distribution is not at all known, and it's not easy or not possible, in fact, to mathematically relate with a Gaussian random variable or with a uniform random variable. In that sense, it is almost impossible to mathematically tackle this. And these GANs has achieved that. So in fact, these are known to be, say, after convolution neural networks, the breakthrough in deep learning is through GANs. So because they have the remarkable ability of capturing the distribution, which has been not beaten since ages, or since several decades. So we can have these Z maybe from a uniform distribution. Okay, so or from a normal distribution. Okay, and from there we generate some initially a single sample or a vector of samples. Okay, a vector of random variable. So it's a random vector, and you can give as input to this, and this can have actually a series of convolution layers, and subsequently this can also have actually series of fully connected layers, and subsequently you can have convolution layers. Okay, so and then with these convolution layers, essentially we will be finally trying to get to the image size. Okay, so this is of the image size. Okay, this may be 20 cross 20 if we are generating, say, for example, digits, for example 28 cross 28, and this may start with, say, 100 cross 1 or so. Okay, and then subsequently you will be getting 20 cross 20, and this generator is at the beginning, if you see what the generated images, they look they doesn't make much meaning. Okay, so this is say initially you don't have directly some provision to train this, so the assessment is done through discriminator, and hence the discriminator is the one which will in fact guide the cost function. So in for discriminator, if you see, so we have actually 1 or 0 possible. Assume that discriminator sees the generated samples, that is Z of Z, okay, and compares with X, the original sample, and says like if it is the generated sample is as I mentioned, the discriminator has two objectives, dual objectives. What it tries to say is this is also not has to be trained, right? So the discriminator function has to say that for d of x it has to give 1, because the original sample, if it is sent through the discriminator, it should say that discriminator it is original sample. Okay, so it is one objective of discriminator is to say that discriminate d of x equal to 1 when we send the input, and this is essentially another, it can be a convolution neural network, okay, where it takes the input samples, okay, and then tries to give, actually finally it can be a fully connected network, okay. It starts with convolution layers and subsequently goes to fully connected layer, and finally here binary cross entropy is used, categorical cross entropy is used. Okay, so what the objective of discriminator is, it tries to say that d of x equal to 1. That's one objective. Second objective, as I mentioned, g of z if you send, that is the generated sample from the generator, the discriminator has to undermine it or critic. Okay, and its objective is, it says that it is 0. At the beginning, the main aim is to see that the generated length such that it to the it equals or it generates as equally as real samples. So the in a critic nature, first the g of z, whatever is the g of z generated, d of g of z is set to 0. So in that sense, what it does is 1 minus of, if we consider d of g of z, okay, this is essentially is 1. Okay, so using these two, now if I formulate, say this is one class, this is for the other class. Okay, class 1, you assume that this is the other class. If you are formulating a cross entropy loss function, then what essentially we have a ln of d of x, okay, we plus also 1 into ln of d of x plus 0. This is for one first objective. For the second objective, what we have is, as I have mentioned, instead of putting it 0, I have put 1 minus of this because I need to get the term of d of g of z. Okay, so it is 1 into ln of 1 minus d of g of z. Okay, so what essentially we are doing is, we are trying to say, discriminator is trying to say that it is fair. Okay, not correct. That's the dual objective discriminator has. Plus anyway 0. So this is the second one. If we consider, this essentially is the objective function of the discriminator. Okay, so but this objective function has to be like this is with negative sign because this is cross entropy. So if we consider with negative sign, we have to minimize this objective function, right? So then this has to be calculated not for a single sample, for a large number of samples. So x for large number of samples generated from p of x. Okay, and then here large number of samples z has to come, okay, because many generator has to generate many samples from the noise p of z. Okay, so this is essentially the overall cost function, which is to be, this is discriminator cost function. Okay, so if I consider j or l, l of a discriminator. Okay, and this has to be what it has to be done, it has to be minimized with respect to okay, the parameters of the discriminator, right? So d of z, this discriminator has the parameters d of theta d. Parameters means what? Learning parameters. You have actually kernels, weights, and so on. This assume that has actually theta g. Okay, I'm just writing here itself. So that actually d is the block name or block we are referring by d, and theta d is the parameters of the block. Okay, similarly here g is the representation for the block for generator, and theta z is the parameters of the block. So we have to minimize this with respect to the negative sign, or if we bring in this negative sign to positive sign, then what do? We have to maximize it. Okay, so this is how is the objective function for the discriminator. but discriminator alone can't do, because generator has to evolve. So they, in the game of this generator trying to generate better samples, and then fool the discriminator, and discriminator trying to capture in a critic way, like say that the generated samples are not still on par. Okay, so the generator also has to be trained. How generator has to be trained? Such that this g of z has to be like as d of g, the objective of generator is d of g of z has to be what? Has to be equal to 1. That is the objective of generator. Because generator, what it tries to say, while the discriminator role is to say that these are not like on par with the original samples, the role of generator is to make them on par with the original samples. So this is for the objective for generator. Okay, this is objective for discriminator. Okay, and hence what should we do here for the generator? It has to, so what we are doing is maximizing here, and if we minimize this function for generator, what we are doing, so essentially we are trying to say that g of z will be equal to 1. Yeah. So with negative sign, we are minimizing. Sorry. Oh, yeah. With negative sign, if we see just the generator cost function, if we see ln of d of g of z. Okay, this has to be minimized. Okay, minimized with respect to theta g. Okay, and this translates to maximizing with say positive sign, but with 1 minus when you consider, again it is minimizing. Okay, so this one and whatever we have written here are same. Please note that with respect to the generator. Okay, so this is the cost function for discriminator and the generators put together. And this is optimized in a like joint setting, in the sense that once we optimize for generator, once we optimize again for discriminator, and then we try to generate better samples again, and then discriminator tries to see more critically, and then generator tries to generate more and more better samples to fool discriminator. And finally what happens, the like discriminator will not be able to compare between these two, so the cross entropy essentially will be equal to kind of half in between. Okay, so that's where the discriminator ends, or the training ends. Okay, is this discussion clear for the generative adversarial networks?
Sir, small question.
Yeah, please ask.
If this discriminator is not able to find any differences, then will we get the same exact input image as the output image?
Yes, yes, yes. So essentially, once we optimize this, so discriminator will not be able to test between these two. So it ends up with kind of half. So this will also be half, and this will also be half kind of thing. Okay, so in that case, what happens is it generator generates almost the original images.
Sir, but then why would we want that to happen? We want it to generate new images, right?
New images means, so you are saying that it generates the same images as the data set. That's what you're asking in the data.
Yes.
No, it doesn't generate same images in the data set. See, what happens is that's where we are trying to map the noise distribution to the image distribution. See, in this noise, what we are trying to do with this this generator block, we are not giving a particular image like in autoencoders and trying to generate the same image again. But in here, what we are doing, we are essentially giving a noise vector from a distribution. Now what happens, we can generate different noise vectors, right? So each time the noise generated will be say 0.2, 0.1. Okay, even if we consider single value for the noise element here. Okay, so there are infinite possibilities. So it can generate infinite number of samples now. The mapping is from single noise vector to single image. Okay, that's how it happens, but there is no one-to-one mapping as such, but we can say that roughly for different noise vectors, different images gets generated. The realization is distribution is only defined. So we are mapping the distributions, sampling from distribution. So there are so many number of samples we can sample. For each sample we don't know. In fact, we can't tell in this basic GANs, we can't tell what image we get unless we see from the generator.
Sir, so the noise vector here is the noise image, right?
No, not noise image. It's purely noise vector. So like a Gaussian vector itself, Gaussian random. So you have actually x1 to x10, for example, or say as x100. Okay, you generate each one xi is generated from a say 0,1, for example. Okay, you just generate Gaussian random variables, 100 Gaussian random variables, and then put them as a vector and give it as the noise distribution. In higher dimensions, if we directly want to do it, n, okay, 0, matrix of identity. Okay, where I is say whatever dimensions. And this is a very simple case or very trivial example, but we usually have mu, sigma from Z. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Like I'm trying to understand what is the use of this, because if you give a noise vector and trying to generate an image,
Right.
so use this particular application. Sir.
Okay, see the advantage of this, if we see now, as I mentioned so far, there are two challenges. One thing is better representation of the samples. That's what is mainly driving the application level problems. Second thing is capturing the distribution of samples itself, which will enable us for synthesis. Okay, and that is the base for many problems, or tackling many problems. Okay, so this attempts onto the capturing the base. So from that you can do like I will show some of the demonstrations on how it is effectively used for better object detection, better super resolution, and better other tasks that we will see. Okay, but more of this, say once this comes, the first importance or the first surprise for us is on this generating samples itself. Actually, so we have limited samples for training. Okay, with this you can generate hundreds of samples for training. Okay, and say face images, if you want to train, I can generate hundreds of faces, thousands of faces, infinite faces, in fact, kind of. And they can be used for training face versus non-face kind of classification, right? So that's a very one basic application.
Yes, sir. So,
yeah.
Sir, what is the significance of the input here? So, if say we train a network with some set of label images, but the input vectors in one try are arbitrary, one set 1, and in another try there is set 2. So, what is the difference between these both cases?
Yeah, see what essentially were previously see one-to-one mapping, if we do in any case, the problem is we only will be able to do for a limited, we should have a clear guidance on what the input should be. Here input is also coming from a distribution and output is also another distribution. Say input is noise distribution, output is image distribution. Okay, and we are trying to map from say one space of input distribution. Okay, so here you assume that you have this is a noise distribution. So I assume that since there is no class, I'm continuing for some more time. So probably I think another 15 minutes we will take. Okay, so we have actually noise distribution here and we have image distribution. So here images sit. Okay, so I assume that here at some class of images sits, and here another class of images sits, and here another class of images sits. Okay, and here are some noise variables. So I can, in fact, I can train in such a way that say from these noise samples, so sometimes this can be mapped to this, Okay, sometimes this can be mapped to this, sometimes this can be mapped to this. In basic GANs, there is no control as such. Okay, in fact. So if you give a random noise vector here, okay, you may get actually here 2, or you may get actually here 5. Okay, you may get actually 9 that is generated from this noise vector. We don't know a priori. So this is one kind of say, but still you will be able to generate different handwritten digits. So previously handwritten digits you only need to write. Okay, now these GAN generator will write. Okay, and give you different written digits. Okay, so that's what is happening. So there are some other GANs where we have a control over. So if we give actually say P of say the other distribution can be, so P of this P of some Z, P of Z given Y. Y is the label. So I know that Y is equal to 1 to say 0 to 9 or different samples. So P of, if I give P of Y, P of, okay, Z given 1, then only what I do is all these samples, okay, all these samples will only generate once. Okay, that doesn't generate actually, they doesn't generate 2 and 3 and so on, other digits or other images. Okay, so there are still other GANs which can also control the variations of the samples they generate, rotation, translation, the scale, and then a few other things. Of course, on they can also be assessment on is the information that we have given in the input properly passed on to the output while generating the samples. So they are like conditional GANs and then info GAN. These are few variants of the generative adversarial networks, basic GANs. So Prabhat, is your question answered?
Yes, sir. So we are actually training the data with arbitrary inputs,
Right.
but from a particular noise distribution. So if we take sample some other, we take another sample from this distribution, we'll get a different image.
Correct.
Yes.
So we have to take the sample from the same noise distribution only, but the same sample will not take. Okay, new more and more samples will. So keep changing the sample, right? So and we'll keep getting the new hand like images.
Understood, sir.
Yeah, fine. Good. So let me share the slides, quickly discuss for a couple of minutes so that we will get a better overview of these things through visualization of these GANs. So again, I'm taking Professor Fifi Lee team and I will be discussing some of the generative adversarial networks concepts, and then few advanced generative adversarial networks which I have taken from this their respective papers. So as I mentioned, the autoencoder is in some sense which is reasonably close to at least making unsupervised classification of samples. See, one more thing that we are trying to do here is generating the original samples means that we want to capture the distribution of samples, and that helps in some sense in a like to move towards the unsupervised kind of scenarios. Because we are generating the sample having the sample distribution in itself means we can generate new samples and so on. So with limited samples, we will be able to generate more samples. So all samples need not be labeled by ourselves itself. Okay, the network or the method will label half of them or more of them. Okay, and it's a semi-supervised kind of scenario. Okay, so even the autoencoders, when we see when we keep training with respect to the original image and its replica to come here. Okay, if we train with reasonable number of samples, new image, even if we give here, it will be able to get back the corresponding image here or the features of that image. So in that sense, it extract the feature extraction and so on. And we have the helps towards the unsupervised setting. Okay, for giving the label of it and so on. So as we mentioned, these features can be used as the features to perform classification and so on. And they are also useful for low dimensional representation as shown here. So as we discussed, what the objective here is, given the training data, we are not happy with extracting the features of training data. We want to capture the distribution of training data. And what we want is P of data we need to have, but we are trying to use P of model. Okay, model is trying to capture the P of data. That's what we want to learn. So instead of learning X2 Y, which is X2 features of it Y, we want to learn P of X to P of model. Okay, so that's what is the objective here. So the advantage of it is you can generate many realistic samples, which is not feasible otherwise. In fact, there are some scenarios where the sample generation is very challenging or difficult. And even in many scenarios, generating samples with different variations is of great importance. So as the idea mentioned in our discussion, so we start with a random noise, okay, a noise vector, and that generates, the generator is supposed to generate an images. The early success is in very like crude generation. That itself was almost a miracle in machine learning. But subsequently, we are able to generate very good images. That's a great achievement of generative adversarial networks. So the discriminator, as we discussed, it tries to see, it has the original data. Please note that here it is going in unsupervised manner, because generator never know the original sample directly with itself. In sense that generator is not looking at the original samples. Okay, it is just trying to generate, and the discriminator is in a critic manner. It only has the provision to see. Okay, and then see and tell whether it is correct or not. Okay, so in that way it goes in a like a two-step process, but in a game theoretic framework, to in sense through critic help each other. So the generator generates a fake sample initially, and then discriminator has the provision to see the real sample as well, and then through cross entropy it tries to provide a optimization function that enables us to compare with the original sample and make the generator to generate better samples. So as we just formulated the cost function, you can see that the discriminator is trying to have its high probability for the original sample and have a low probability for the generated sample. Okay, and generator is trying to do the other way. It is trying to say that the discriminator sample is correct. Okay, that's what is the objective of the generator. So this cost function is optimized with respect to the both networks now, two networks in a min-max game they call. And this can be broken or put into two different cost functions as well for better optimization. That's what is usually done because this is a dual optimization. So we need both generator network and discriminator network. Both are to be trained to make them play better. So the one on one side we optimize this, on the other side we optimize this. So this now you can see that whatever we have written here with minimization, okay, can also be written as maximization without with dropping 1 minus. Okay, so this is essentially the objective of generator. It tries to say that it's generating the correct sample with respect to the discriminator, right? Hope these cost functions are clear. So these in some sense are the crux of the generative adversarial networks. Okay, and these are done through over a batch of samples or many samples to have a better statistical learning, and that's what is seen here. Okay, and then you have actually real and fake samples generated. The fake samples initially generated by the generator, and subsequently real samples being generated by the generator. And these samples look almost like a original samples. So you can see that the generator samples of handwritten digits and faces here. So initial experiments are with these things. And subsequently, they could generate more complex samples, color images, and so on. So there is a long, lot of applications on GANs. And in fact, they could do many different tasks with GANs. So since we have now the generated distribution itself in our hand, we can easily do, say, we can capture the distribution without spectacles and with spectacles, and we can do, okay, manipulation using the distribution to attach a spectacle to the sample in the distribution where there are no spectacles and so on. So all such things are possible now because we essentially are capturing the distribution of the samples itself. So a lot of literature on GANs. So few of the celebrated papers, as we mentioned, are GANs and conditional GANs, and then few others are anyway. We initially only feed-forward neural networks were used, and subsequently convolution neural networks are also used. So that's a deep like deep feature based GAN and so on. And then Versatile GAN is another very well celebrated work. So where the optimization was simplified. So the GANs being actually having dual objective function or having two learning networks within them, the optimization is very difficult. They don't converge usually. So this Versatile GAN is the one of the network where it focused on better optimization of in GANs. And different directions people have taken for generating the networks. There are few other things like cyclic GAN and so on, which will try to use the GAN itself, GAN framework itself to generate from one distribution to other distribution of images. So instead of generating from noise vector to image, can I generate digit to a face or face to digit kind of things? And that's essentially done in the cyclic GANs, say zebra to horse and horse to zebra kind of things. So this is one celebrated work in GANs, that is conditional GANs. As I mentioned, here the objective is to learn not like P of Z to P of X, P of Z given Y to P of X. What is P of Z given Y? So we also provide the label of the sample that we are want to generate. See, as I mentioned in GANs, we don't have control on what generator generates. So if I give 0 to 9 digits, it can generate any digit here. But in conditional GANs, if I give a label of 2, that means encoding for label of 2, that's say 1 hot encoding of label of 2 here in Y. So what both are given as inputs for the generator. Then what it does, both concatenated and given to the generator. And then what it does, it generates actually the only second handwritten 2 in different manners. So here we have better control. So as you can see the cost function, hope you are able to see the cost function. So it is P of Z given Y everywhere instead of P of Z. Okay, like earlier. Hope you are able to see the cost function, right? Yeah, right. So you can see here P of X given Y is what we want to like we have the distribution because we are already given label Y. Okay, and then P of Z given Y is what is here. Also, and then the same cost function with just with the replacement of given Y because Y is given here. Okay, that's the conditional GAN. This is how we can generate only specific class of samples. So we have the control over which class of samples we are generating. Then the other celebrated work is on the InfoGAN. What it does is, say, for example, if we are giving, say, it uses mutual information or maximizing the mutual information of the code vector to generate a particular type of samples. Say, for example, if I want to generate, say, chairs at different scales, then same type of chairs at different scales, different rotations. What we do is we give a different code vectors. For say rotation, a different like for all chairs we may give, sorry, for different rotations we may give different code vectors. So this distribution is now encoding, in some sense this code vector is trying to say what rotation we are generating. Okay, and that kind of control we can have. And it is discriminator not only estimates the closeness between the real sample and generated sample, but also it tries to give the mutual information maximization between the code vector that's given and the like the generated sample. Okay, so G of Z and C are compared in mutual information, and that's this is maximized in that way. So this is the modified cost function where mutual information is also there in this, and along with the GAN's cost function. So in that case, we can generate based on the code vector, we can generate a particular sample or particular rotation or particular scaling or rotation or scaling kind of things. So there are, as I mentioned, the GANs are have applications in computer vision as well. So one typical way of using GANs is, see, if we have a super resolution network. So what it does, given the low resolution image, it gives the high resolution image. This whole thing can be considered as a generator now. Okay, so instead of random sample, now we are giving a low resolution image as input sample and generating the high resolution image. And now this high resolution image can be used through the discriminator to see with respect to the original high resolution image whether it is correct or not. In conventional super resolution, what do? We directly apply backpropagation from here, giving the ground truth also at the output of the generator itself. But in GAN framework, what we are doing? We are decoupling the output. We are not giving the output here. We are giving the output only to the, or we are giving the true high resolution image or true image only to the discriminator and trying to see whether it matches with respect to the generated sample or not by the generator. Okay, in this way we can perform like super resolution as well. So one loss is to have the GAN loss to generate them better and better. One loss is on the seeing the actually content loss, where you can also see directly how it matches with respect to the generate like high resolution image. So both can be there. Conventionally, we are backpropagating from here, and we are also looking at the generative. We are imparting the generative capability for this network to generate more variations of the super resolved image. Similarly, is done for object detection. For example, here you have actually this is the so perceptual GAN it is called. So you have the small object, take the features of it, and then from this you try to get the super resolved features of it, and then you just so from the super resolved image get the features of it, and this discriminator compares these two. So the model is roughly same. What we are doing is here object detection network will be there, which will detect and give its features. From that, we are trying to generate this generator is trying to see whether the object detected, does it have better features equal to the features of a good resolution image or not of that object. So this can be different in the data set, and this can be different, like this can be at low resolution, this can be at high resolution, or this can be different, and this can be different as well. But the object class is same. So we assume that the high level features of that will be same. So this is another, this is the same perceptual GAN. Whole thing here. I'm skipping the details. They all have the both object detection loss functions as well as GAN loss functions now. Okay. So this is a cyclic GAN. As I mentioned, what happens is we tries to generate one sample from the other. So I'm skipping the details. Yeah, this is also effectively used in tracking as well. So taking a patch here, and again, we try to see the generated patch from the tracker. Is it through discriminator? Is it matching with the ground truth? So I'm concluding here. So if you have any quick questions, you can ask.